květy, les i kamení. Kde píseň zní, tam zelená se tráva a člověk osud náš tam unese. Kde píseň zní, tam zloba zaostává a zdaleka všem lidem vyhnese. Kde píseň zní, tam zelená se tráva a člověk osud náš tam unese. Kde píseň zní, tam zloba zaostává a zdaleka všem lidem vyhnese. Buď zdráva písni ve všech koutech světa, 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 ve všech koutech světa. A kdo pak bude chodit se čmánky, pro kousek nebes čiré studánky. Buď zdráva písni, trnku skřiváčí, kde zníš, tam celá zem se roztančí, kde zníš, tam celá zem se roztančí. Kde zníš, tam život horce pulzuje. A nekončí a je, a nekončí a je, a nekončí a je, a nekončí a je, a nekončí a přežije svou písní. Nekončí a je, a přežije tvou písní. Nekončí a přežije.
Dear friends, thank you for coming. Dobry večer. It's the 23rd Prague Writers Festival. It's the gala evening, I think you've noticed. We have a very, very exciting evening to do with revolution, a very small intermission, and then a reading by Orhan Pamuk. So first let me introduce our great patron, the patron of the festival, Milan Stech, who's the president of the Czech Senate. So I'd like to bring him on stage. Milan, please join us. Bless you. It's a present.
Thank you. Vážené dámy, vážení pánové, vítejte v Praze. Letošní ročník Festivalu spisovatelů v pořadí už 23. nese podtitul Zrození národů. Vím, že organizátoři nezvolili toto téma náhodně. Tento rok si v naší zemi připomínáme 90.
This year, we're celebrating the 95th anniversary of the establishment of independent Czechoslovakia, as well as the 25th anniversary of the breakup of the Czechoslovak Federation, which is a breakup that some people welcomed and others thought was unfortunate. I happen to join the second group. I also believe that it was unfortunate. But it is not something that all Czechs stand united on, and perhaps they will never stand united. When it comes to the establishment of Czechoslovakia, most Czechs will think of October the 28th, which is the day when independent Czechoslovakia was proclaimed here in Prague. But a lot preceded that day, among others the Pittsburgh Declaration, that this Prague Writers' Festival makes direct reference to, in fact. In October this year, the second part of the Prague Writers' Festival will take place in Pittsburgh for that very reason. And I'm very happy that I'll be able to attend that event this fall. The Prague Writers' Festival is, in my view, one of the key cultural events that take place in Prague each year. I'm not going to quote the names of all the important writers that have visited our country thanks to the festival over the past 20 years. Many of them are the Nobel Prize laureates, but all of them are the crème de la crème of current literature. Their conversations and readings were attended by many, particularly young people. They have brought to Prague and to the Czech Republic the attention of the entire world of literature. So when the organizers asked me, as the president of the Senate, to take this event under my auspices, I did not hesitate, because I've always thought that the upper house of parliament is supposed to be perhaps a calmer forum for political debate, a forum when we think in longer terms, when we don't think only in economic or partisan categories. The benefit of culture for our society and the benefits of being able to meet proponents of literature are not immediate. It's a fruit that has to mature. It's an investment into people, and it takes time for it to bear fruit. The Czech Republic has never been and will never be a political superpower or an economic superpower. Our strength was our culture, our creativity, and perhaps the awareness of our own history. Prague and other cities have a unique atmosphere, and perhaps Prague is seen in this particular light elsewhere. It is seen as a city of culture in a cultural country. The Prague Writers' Festival has been making a contribution to that for more than 20 years, and would like to take this opportunity to thank the organizers, in particular Mr. Michael March, who is an American, but we've long considered him one of our own. He has been working with us very closely over the past many years.
Jenom poslední větu. Děkuji vám za pozornost, přeji vám.
Just to finish, thank you very much for your attention. I hope that you're going to enjoy this festival and that you'll come to the Senate tomorrow for our next conversation, and I hope that this is going to be a successful festival. Thank you very much once again, and enjoy your stay in Prague.
I don't know if Obram Zobek is in the audience. Is Obram here? Obram?
Ano.
Yes? Stand up. Get up here. Just stand. Obram Zobek? A very great man in all respects. He's contributed for many years the statue, the Lady of the Lake statue, a beautiful bronze statue for the Spiros Virgos Prize for Freedom of Expression. We love Obram. He's really very nice and a very great sculptor. So, Obram Zobek. I guess I should talk about our personal problems and disaster management, in a sense. But the theme of the festival is the birth of nations. How are nations born, destroyed, or misused? Misused. Perhaps it's all a forgery. At this moment, we are being misused. The evil eye of austerity attached to the body politic. And tonight, our authors will attend to the specifics. For the first time in 23 years, the festival has suffered political censorship. The Cultural Committee of Top 09 in Prague cut our budget by 90%. A willful act of destruction. Willful. Destructive. My mother used to tell me, when you lie forever. Thank you. We're going to have a spot in a moment. I like that. A little bit more. Okay. Spiros Virgos, a very fine Greek poet, diplomat. He was the director of the festival, and he died in Prague in 2007. So we created the Spiros Virgos Prize for Freedom of Expression for his memory. So we're going to do two things. You're going to see a small spot about the prize, the writers who we gave the prize to. Then I will speak about the winner of this year's prize. So first, a spot.
Spiros Virgos. Jméno, které nese cena za svobodu projevu. Skvělý básník a v občanském životě neúnavný obhájce lidských práv. Jako středoškolák byl souzen za účast při studentských demonstracích. Bolestnou exilovou zkušenost prožil po vojenském puči v roce 1967. Po návratu do rodných Athén se podílel na demokratizaci řeckých médií, působil jako novinář, diplomat a tiskový poradce pro národ. V roce 2005 byl ředitelem Mezinárodního festivalu spisovatelů. Cenou za svobodu projevu Festival spisovatelů Praha odměňuje osobnosti literatury,
Spiros
které
Virgos
svým dílem a
Prize
životním
is
příkladem
awarded to
prosazují
those
základní práva člověka.
writers who participate in the fight for human rights. The first laureate of the prize was Natalia Gorbanevska, one of the Magnificent Eight, who back in 1968 showed their disagreement with the occupation of Czechoslovakia. The second winner of the prize was the poet Adonis, who changed our view of history. The third laureate was an American writer, Peter Matheson, who researched the issues of American Aborigines. In 2011, the prize was awarded to Iraqi poet Sadi Yusuf, who was expelled during Saddam Hussein's rule. In 2012, the prize was awarded to an excellent Spanish writer and novelist, Juan Goytisolo, who was known for his excellent moral judgment and his passion for Muslim culture, and also for his defense of those who are marginalized.
So, Juan Goytisolo dedicated his prize to Günter Grass. He said, well, why don't you dedicate the prize to Günter Grass? I said, that's a very good idea. So I wrote to Günter. We didn't receive a reply. It took many months. He wrote a beautiful letter, fabulous handwriting, extraordinary signature, saying, look, I'm old, I'm ill, I can't come to Prague. Give it to somebody else. We wrote back, well, you deserve the prize. What if we came to you? What if we came to your home with Obrum's statue? Would you accept it? Yes. Yes. So the idea is, well, to take the statue to Hamburg, to the home of Günter Grass, the 21st of January, 2013. Günter Grass was actually in the hospital. We changed sort of directions. He had a small flat in Hamburg. We met him there. Some other questions were, of course, we had no money to get to Hamburg. We asked Arnon Grunberg, a fabulous Dutch author, whose family came from Berlin, he spoke perfect German, to interview Günter and to ask him to bring his cameraman. So Arnold wouldn't fly from Amsterdam with a cameraman. We'd somehow meet at the airport in Hamburg. There was snowing, this and that. We met, and then we went to see Günter Grass. It was an extraordinary day. I was very surprised. A very warm man, tremendously intelligent, extremely engaged. Living, alive, thoughtful. So I've written something about Günter Grass for you. And then you'll see a small spot, actually film, of the presentation of the statue. Because, of course, Grass is a sculptor. He loved the statue, by the way. He loved it. Günter Grass describes himself as a court fool in the absence of courts. For us, he speaks as a poet in the most human of forms. He has this courage to describe what he sees. He remains restless as the leaves fall. Günter Grass. On the 20th of January, the very famous date is when Lenz comes down from the mountain. Exactly, yes.
Verstanden?
Ein bisschen.
Ein bisschen, ja.
Bisschen.
Herr Schlüter, haben wir was Wichtiges ausgelassen?
Nein, das war die Lebensgeschichte in einer Stunde.
Ja.
It's heavy. So, on behalf of the Prague Writers Festival,
Za Festival spisovatelů Praha
a prize, the Spiros Purvis Prize for Freedom of Expression, 213. The 21st of January 2013. We missed lunch by a day. We came down from the mountains the 20th of January. It's a very sacred day. This is a sacred day as well. For you to receive the prize. So blessed. The prize is a statue. It's called the Lady of the Lake.
Cenou je soška slavného sochaře.
The prize. There was a lot to say. Conversations have been actually published in Germany with Günter Gressen, Arnold Grunberg, really very important conversations of what's really going on now. And Günter, of course, knew very well Czechoslovakia, had many friends here in the Czech Republic of today. He's a very great writer. What must be said, must be said. We're going to have a conversation on revolution. Okay, the birth of nations, how are nations created? Well, there are many forms. Many nations are created through violence, through revolution. We have the Algerian Revolution, okay, the creation of Algeria. We have the Carnation Revolution, 1974, overthrow of the dictatorship. Very non-violent revolution in Lisbon, with red carnations put in the barrel of the malicious rifles. Revolutions we've heard from Sunala in Egypt, 1952. It's the first. Nasser was the first really Egyptian, shall we say, in 2,000 years to come back into Egypt for the Egyptian people. And now in January 2011. So what we've tried to do is what Aristotle couldn't do, is to bring personal experience to yourselves. And through your own personal experience, then one can make comparisons, not false comparisons, which are basically given to you by the media, by the little birdies. It's given to you. But make your own decisions. Have your personal experience. That's what the festival tries to do. We try to do it. So, in an overall sense, which is going to be contradicted by Thomas Salachek, the moderator, because he has his idea about revolution. My idea, bringing these writers together, was we are concerned with colonialism and the post-colonial world. Hitler tried to colonize the world. Stalin colonized the Soviet Union, then occupied Czechoslovakia. So we're familiar with these forces. Literature presents resistance, offers protection, connects the world. So our conversation, revolution.
Sun Allah Ibrahim.
Sunala Ibrahim. When hearing the name, the readers think of remarkable topics which mark the history of modern literature. Sunala Ibrahim is described as Egyptian Kafka, a rebel from Heliopolis with his revolutionary thinking made a mark on the whole generation of his contemporaries, writes about corruption, financial scandals, torture, foreign debt and social problems. At times he uses newspaper headlines, articles, picture captions, death notices and advertisements in his texts. The short novel Committee was published in Czech. He lives and works in Cairo.
Jasmína Kadra.
Jasmína Kadra, the one who cheats only himself, one of the great narrators of the modern times, born in 1955 in Algiers, where he served as an army officer for many years. His pen name, which means Green Jasmine, was chosen to escape military censorship. Beware of those who talk to you about things more important than your life. Those people are lying. There is nothing, absolutely nothing, that is more important than your life. It is the only thing that truly belongs to you. He became famous through bitter novels and true novels. In those, the Attack and The Swallows of Kabul were published in Czech translation.
Miguel Sousa Tavares.
Miguel Sousa Tavares looks with an attentive eye of a journalist looking at the elements that rule our lives. Born in Porto, has a degree in law, but also works in literature and TV journalism, follows a path which is not for everybody, doesn't choose anything, and I'm not in a situation to be able to choose or select. I observe the things that pass by me, things that I am not seeking and that I only encounter. In his famous novel The Equator, showed the symbolic border between two worlds based on the legacy of the colonial era. He lives and works in Lisbon.
Diskuzi revoluce.
The discussion entitled Revolution will be moderated by a well-known economist and writer in the Czech Republic, Tomáš Sedláček.
Gentlemen, it's a great pleasure to have three gentlemen. We have learned that all of us are addicted smokers, so that makes things easier. But now it's a smoke-free zone, but the topic is not without some smoke. When you look at the word revolution, it looks like evolution with an R in the brackets. Now, R in the brackets is a symbol for copyright. Now, is revolution a copyright of evolution? You look like you can start.
I do?
Please.
Okay. Well, good evening. Let me start by saying it's a pleasure to be in Prague, and it's an honor to be in the 23rd edition of the Prague Writers' Festival. I thank Michael March for the invitation. I thank him and all the people that through the world make these festivals and get, in a way, get writers to meet his readers, and cease to be an abstraction and being someone that you can look face to face. When I entered the theater, I saw the poster of the festival, and it's a man hanging on a tree like a dead bird. I hope I will not hang the same way after my speech, okay? And Professor Thomas Sedláček, I just forgot your question. I'm sorry.
That's the best way to answer a question. You know, okay, I'll rephrase the question. You are very polite.
Thank you.
Jung once said that nothing changes except through some sort of catharsis, a revolution. Nothing changes, and the least of that is human nature. Now, what point is there in revolutions when it is a dream of especially authors to change not just the politics, but in some way how we relate with each other. Now, the world is full of revolutions. They're more peaceful. Here in Europe, we want to get rid of our system here. We're very unhappy with it. We don't know what to change it for, but everybody's very angry with the system, while the rest of the world wants to adapt something that is similar to ours. Is that always the case? Can we evolve in any way except outside of revolutions? That's really the question that I was asking.
Let me start by the beginning of your question and Jung's quotation. I am very afraid of people who want to change the world. I think history shows us that it almost always ends up in disaster. So I think I will take the unpopular side in this discussion and say that I think that whenever mankind moved forward and got into a more just, a more equal, and more free societies, were not by revolutions, but by evolutions. And this started as far as the Greek democracy and the Roman Empire, which I remember it was an empire conquered by the sword, like all the others, but kept united from Syria to England by the law. And even the people that the Romans called the barbarians, and that we now call the Germans, abided by the Roman law because they realized that it was better for him. So when you look at all the revolutions that took place, I wonder, for example, what was more important for mankind? Fidel Castro's revolution in Cuba brought something to the people, but Lula's president of Brazil, smooth evolution, took 12 million people out of hunger, and is abided to provide to every Brazilian house the public electricity, brought millions of people to the school, brought millions of people into the society, and did it in a peaceful, democratic, and quiet way.
Yes, but if you have idiots up there, which happens, I mean, even in this country, what then? If you really have an oppressive power that's not ready to listen to anything except for sheer power or violence.
Thank you. I think that a revolution is a problem. All revolutions are a problem, and they are not necessarily followed in thought. Revolutions have very short memories. They have the attention span of a red fish. So how is the revolution going to change things? It's obsessed with change. It's obsessed with toppling a system. But you have to replace it with something, and that's something they don't really think about. So they start improvising. They fly by the seat of their pants, which reveals incompetence and then follows repression. So it's not about revolution giving birth to something other than hope. But what is hope? I mean, what is hope unless it brings about something constitutive? So for that reason, I don't particularly like revolutions. And I'm not talking about liberation, I'm talking about revolution. Because force and violence are two different things. We can be in pursuit of sovereignty, but in non-violent means. It can be done psychologically. It can be done ideologically. So I have to say that I don't really trust revolutions very much. And I think the humanity's problem, how do I put this? It's not a problem of change. It's the inability to grow up. So far, we have evolved when it comes to our technology and when it comes to our science, but human beings have not really. It almost seems as if the man was still leaving with a spear, but except now the spears are perhaps replaced by nuclear weapons. It's almost as if a human being was a microbe, or perhaps a cancerous cell that attacks everything around itself. This is true of the earth, of the environment. I mean, look at what we're leaving for future generations.
It is one of the basic, I would say, even stories of mankind is that human beings seem to have a disability to survive in paradise for a very long time. Personally and also state-wise. I would like to now enter another word into the debate, and that's the word disillusion, which sort of came from both of your answers, that there is a lot of fear or even disillusion connected with revolution. Now, we've, of course, have all eyes on Egypt and revolutions that are taking place, where a lot of hope is, of course, expecting, but also, and this is an interesting thing, we love technology, but at the same time, we fear it. We love democracy, but at the same time, also, we fear it. How is your reading of what's happening in the Arab Spring, if I may say so?
This is a big subject. I mean, to talk about the whole Arab countries is
no, but from your,
very difficult.
let's just take Egypt now, or...
Yes, we are, there is a struggle going on between the real demands of the armed political people, the simple people, and on the other side, other forces which are trying to keep the old regime going on, and part of them are the new forces of the Islamists. So this is the situation, really. It's very simple.
Now that you say it.
Yes.
Do you have high hopes or do you fear like your colleagues?
If I may, I could go back to that. It's you in the West who made us believe that we are making a revolution. Because it's not a revolution. It's not a revolution at all, because a revolution needs to be led by charismatic leaders. You have a group of people or a person that comes up and presents an ideal. And then, of course, that ideal is going to attract other people. That starts a movement, and that movement comes up with the objective of toppling and replacing the regime. But in the Arab countries, it was just an insurrection that wanted to destroy the previous regime, but did not offer a prospect for the future. And that's why we're so lost. There were organized groups, like the Muslim Brotherhood. But it's not really a revolution. The people who allow an extremist movement to steal their victory deserved the old regime.
So it seems to me that revolution is a very risky project. You've given examples where it went bitter or sour or worse. The end state was worse than in the beginning, and there are also good examples. Now, of course, the obvious question is what distinguishes one from the other, but that I think is also something that we could talk about. But when I think about revolution, I think of it in terms of systemic change. You change one system for another, hopefully better. But the way isn't like this. The way is always through even more chaos, through more pain, and the transition period is very painful. And some countries or some systems get stuck in the lower, so to speak, lower order. We have countries here, even in the Central and Eastern Europe, that this has happened to them. They are worse off now than they were, let's say, during the totalitarian regime.
What do you mean worse?
Well, there is a new totalitarian regime which is even more brutal in some way.
Where?
Well, I don't want to, pull names, but it seems that countries little east from here.
Okay. You're talking about.
I'm not talking about this one.
Okay. Georgia.
For example.
Little east. How many miles?
They will tell us 2 hours before they arrive.
Well,
gentlemen, when is it when you see a revolution in TV, or in news? What signs can you judge that this is maybe going in the right way? Or what signs do you know immediately that this is an accident waiting to happen?
What you call revolution, I think the last one I saw was the Iranian one. And it was, although there were 60 years of difference in between and different people, different actors, it had some similitude with the Soviet Revolution in 1917. There was a Lenin called Khomeini who came from exile to exert power. And the minute I saw Khomeini landing in Tehran airport, I realized it was going to be awful because it was a theocratic revolution. Communism, Soviet communism, in my opinion, was also a religion in some aspects. So it's true that old Greeks used to say that if you want to start something new, you have to start by the cows.
By the?
Cows.
Cowards?
Cows. Destruction.
I see. Okay. Chaos, I see.
Chaos.
I thought cowards. That would
No.
Cowards can go first.
No, cowards is a Greek expression that you're right, is chaos.
Entropy.
Okay. And from the chaos, something new can start. But this was 3,000 years ago. The problems we face now are much more important. We face problems like having to rule this wild capitalism, this casino capitalism we live in. We have to rule countries like North Korea and that puppet sitting on a nuclear bomb. We have to rule problems with the change of the climate. We have to provide food and water for all men on this planet. And this you cannot solve neither alone, neither with revolutionaries. You have to solve it with people of good sense, good leaders. How do you get to have good leaders? True, maybe which is the most important revolution you can do, education. Education means people to have access to information, to science, to culture, to freedom of speech, and this forms leaders and forms people that can recognize the true leaders. Let me say one example. In my lifetime, the best revolution, or what you can call revolution, I've witnessed was the foundation of the European Union. Because when you look at the story of this continent, and when you realize that we spent centuries fighting one to another, we have different religions, we have different languages, we have different nations, sometimes we have even different nations within the same country. And you get all that together and have a political project which is to gather the best of each one and together make a supranationality founded in law, freedom, democracy, and progress. This was a fantastic project. Why it failed now? Because it was a too big idea for small people, for small leaders. And the people who found Europe were great leaders, a great generation of leaders. Where are they now? I don't know. But that's why we are failing this project, and it's a tragedy.
Thank you very much for saying that. I thought I was the last Euro-optimist in this country. Please, did you want to add something?
Non, je suis totalement d'accord avec lui.
I fully agree with him. Well, we should not be having huge illusions if we are not huge enough, if you're small.
There is a song that you just reminded me by John Lennon, Imagine There Is No Country or Nation. I wonder if you can and then it talks about no wars. And I was also thinking, you know, if Greek bankruptcy or Irish bankruptcy or even the Cypriot bankruptcy happened, let's say, 70 years in the past, the only thing that we would be talking about here is how to attack them in the most efficient way.
Yeah.
This is what you did with countries or nation states that failed economically or politically. Today, nobody thinks like this. Today, we really want to help them. We don't know how, but we try to help them. Is this something new? Can you witness, and this is something that I think is an appropriate question for you as writers who are sensitive to these things perhaps more than anybody else. Do you think that we have, as mankind or as Europe or as this continent that is surrounded in this hemisphere, have we changed? Have we now more understanding that, you know, he's not an idiot just because he's from a different country? We wish other countries well. This is something that's never been before. We always wished ill for somebody who is a little different. Is that a change that can last, and is that a new hope that we may have as in this continent and the surrounding areas?
It is up to you. You are from the continent.
Well, yeah.
No, but how do you see it, for example, from your perspective, this whole idea of European Union, which is an idea that was supposed to destroy the fetishism of a nation state, really, because that's what brought us into all these wars.
We have to, I know some details, as we, all of us, first of all, that the Russian mafia had a lot of money in Cyprus. Let us speak concretely. And now, the other thing is that the banks of Germany or this European unity, which I don't know exactly the thing.
Nobody knows.
Okay. They are very angry that this little island has all this money. Why shouldn't this money come to Germany, for instance? And so this is the problem. This is the unity you are talking about. It is what kind of unity? It is the unity of the big banks, the big cartels, the big multinationals against the poor, small fishes like Cyprus or whatever. That's what I think.
Okay.
Well, but the big question is that the big mafia, Russian money, is not in Cyprus, is in England, in Holland, in Germany. What is in Cyprus is peanuts compared with the rest. The big money is in London, and that's why England doesn't want to face the offshores. The offshores, for example. They don't want to end with the offshores. They just don't want to hear about it. So this Europe is become a very, I don't know, it's unruling. Before, you said that what happened in Cyprus and in Greece happened 17 years ago, we will attack the problem. That's a fact. And 70 years ago, we will attack the countries. But there is still one thing. When I landed yesterday in Prague airport, I went through the luggage claim without showing a document, a passport. And if you remember how Europe was 30 or 40 years ago, just by the fact that you were a foreigner in a foreign land, you were a suspect. Mm-hmm. And this achievement is enormous. It's fantastic. The Schengen space is something unbelievable. The fact that you don't have the same money and not being robbed by the bank when you buy foreign money and when you sell foreign money, it's absolutely fantastic. But Europe cannot be defended without citizens. And citizens must understand that not everything is on the hands of the leaders. We must have a word. And this idea of Europe also demands duties and efforts, not only money and rights. You have to stand for Europe if you want to have it. In my opinion, for example, it's not because I'm sitting to these honorable guests. I think the idea of Europe should be extended to the North Mediterranean till Turkey. Mm-hmm. Because there is, Where I come from, Portugal, we are heirs of the Greek Roman society with the Arab influence. We are very much more closer to the Mediterranean than we are to Czech Republic, for example. If I feel you are European as me, I don't know why you are not European as well. And I think that Europe should integrate those countries, should go to Turkey, and will be a power, a world power. But what is happening is the contrary. We see the nationalisms growing again. We see 27 countries union that in fact is ruled by one country, and this is not Europe you dreamed of and I dreamed of.
So how do you, gentlemen, then see the future of nation states? Because we have now had very...
Je voudrais rebondir sur ce qu'il disait.
I would like to say that he is right when he says that Europe is a revolution, but Europe is an intellectual revolution. The problem that I perceive here lies in the fact that hand in hand with globalization, people get marginalized and people end up thinking about the ways of becoming rich, and that's the gravest mistake that we can commit. Europe must be based on human beings, on citizens, whereas in Europe they focus more on banking industry and finance. But I believe that true democracy, but indeed the true federalist movement in Europe should be about focusing on European citizenship, and politicians should focus on the European spirit, that is, how to create a Europe which would be more competitive, which would be better to live in. They should focus on citizens, not just look at money, at financial flows, etc. Because where you end up is, look, on those earlier days, we were happy with our little economy that was run by ourselves, and nowadays we've got to follow all those regulations in finance. People panic and we don't like it. Why is it? The idea was great to start with, but human beings have somehow evaporated from there, and the European leaders do not share this philosophy of togetherness among citizens. So Europe is being built where it should not be built. Let's look at Victor Hugo, the first person who referred to the idea of the United States of Europe more than 100 years ago. So it is a cultural and intellectual ambition, and we cannot implement it if we only focus on financial aspects of the matter. When I was in France, I was invited by the ex-president, Mr. Sarkozy, to talk about the subject. And I said, look, France has its future in Maghreb, not just in Europe, because Maghreb is a fertile area, whereas Europe remains a utopia which only focuses on the intangible financial aspects, talking about moving the industry to cheaper countries, etc. And finance has always been a problem. That's where there is the devil.
Which is an interesting thing, because this was one of the, in fact, somewhat a leading idea of Europe to prevent nations from hating each other. And the method was exactly through economics. The goal of Europe was, now that we've talked a little bit about Lenin, make trade, not war. And the goal of Europe is so that we stop hating each other, stop fighting each other, and that was through trading. Now, in that sense, it was achieved. I don't think we are as far as to say that we're Europeans. We still prefer to be called Czech, Portuguese, and others, whereas this is something that you only learn when you travel outside of Europe, where I always say that I'm from Europe, because Czech Republic doesn't really ring a bell. So I'm very European when I'm in China or in some other superpower sort of a position. But from that perspective, we are not fighting each other. Even the small skirmishes in northern Spain or northern Northern Ireland, I wanted to say Israel, sorry, Northern Ireland, are sort of resolved. You don't see these small skirmishes anymore, and we do trade with each other. So mission accomplished from that point of view, but we have exactly now fetishized the economics, and we want this to grow and grow, and this could possibly be the end of Europe, precisely because this economic could kill us, as it is killing us now. It's not the culture.
Vous ne devriez pas dire je suis européen.
Well, you shouldn't say that you're European. It would be much better to say you're human. It would be better to say you're human, not just European.
Can you repeat? Sorry, the translator didn't...
Vous avez dit, vous étiez chez les Chinois et vous sentiez...
You said that when you were in China, you feel yourself like a European, but now I would like to ask you, please say that you're a human being, that you're human, not European. That's better.
I feel as a human being even in Europe, which is always nice. No, but it is a huge part, no, but that's a very good point. It's a huge part of our human identity for good and also for very bad reasons that we feel Czech, German, Portuguese, Egyptian. When is this feeling belonging to a nation or Europe healthy? And when is it exactly what Europe is infamous for, and that's hating because of a different nation?
I don't really know. For me, a nation is not based just on an identity. It is based on citizenship, not nationality. If I decide that I live in France, I opt for French nationality, French citizenship, it'll be my choice, but this will not happen. I will remain Algerian. Why do I want to remain Algerian? There's a simple reason for that. Algeria is in my body. Of course, there is a certain pain in this feeling of identity. There had been a lot of dead people, which enabled me to live and write and meet my readers. If it were not for those who fought against colonialism, I would have ended up in the Sahara Desert, where I'd be just wearing my traditional clothes. I'll have 12 goats and a few wives, etc., and there would have been no revolution. So I'm actually grateful. I'm grateful, and I feel gratefulness towards a certain country. It's deep gratefulness, and that is why I cannot separate myself from any one nation. I'm still a part of my nation. I know where I come from. I know how hard it was, how much it cost, so to speak, which formed me. I don't know what people's notion of a homeland is, but you like your homeland because it is your past, your roots, and it will remain there for your children. So, this cannot be explained. You've got to live it. I wrote it in one of my books. Algeria is a feeling for me. It's inexplicable. You've got to experience it.
Moi, Algérien.
But here you're slightly contradicting yourself. Even if I get French citizenship, I will remain Algerian. No, I wouldn't be able to do that. But you said that if you were granted French citizenship, I would feel still Algerian. So here, that's what you said. So the citizenship is not so important, but rather the identification with the nation. You must have misunderstood me. I said if maybe I would have decided to live in France, I think that nation should be based not on national identity, but on citizenship. Are there Algerians who are actually French? No, it's identity which is important. No, you're contradicting yourself. If someone grants you a different citizenship, the identity remains untouched, remains the same, your national identity. If you decide you will belong to another nation, you will be granted citizenship, not nationality. I believe it's the other way around.
We all have a feeling of being closer to home. And home is our nation, not our country, our nation. Where you feel at home, that's where you belong. And if I am China, I'm very far away from our world. If I come to India, I'm closer, but I'm still feeling European. And if I come to Europe, then I must go to my country to feel completely at home. And you feel that because you were born in a civilization with a culture, with an heritage, which is different from one to another. That difference, in my opinion, is good. And the difference between us Europeans are good. But if you go out of European space, you feel what it is, the European identity. And this is a block of rights, of principles, of rules of democracy that even when we don't go by the rules, we feel these are the right rules. And I am very proud to be an European citizen.
Mais qu'est-ce que vous entendez par identité?
But how do you understand identity? When you say European identity, what's that supposed to mean? Well, it started in 1789 with the French Revolution, which was perhaps the only revolution that left us with equality, fraternity, and liberty, which is a motto that we will perhaps still all agree on. And I think that is the root of our contemporary identity. But it also started with the Greek democracy, like I said at the beginning. Well, then I guess we don't understand the same thing when we say identity. Well, but I think we have a similar notion of identity. But it's not the same, and it's perhaps because of that, because I always thought that identity is belonging. Identity is belonging to your family and so forth. And that's why I said that identity is still fighting with citizenship, because in Algeria we have Arabs, we have the Shawim, we have the Berbers, we have the Tuaregs, we have the Greeks, the Italian, the Mediterraneans that have spent their entire life living there. So it's a nation. So that's why I'm speaking of citizenship. Citizenry, perhaps.
That's very nice. That's very nice.
I think we are saying the same thing by different words.
Yeah. Which is a wonderful summary of things. Let me just try to unite the vocabulary here. When is the thin line, or is it a thin line between feeling proud, patriotic about a nation, like I'm quite sure you feel about Portugal, I also feel about Czech Republic. When I contribute, I want to contribute to the culture of Czech Republic. This is what I primarily think. Where is the thin line between, let's say, patriotism, which is healthy, and nationalism that's already saying that we are better, or we deserve better than we do?
The difference is everything. Patriotism teaches you to love your country. And loving your country is not just saying my country is the biggest, the most beautiful in the world. It's being able to recognize its defaults, its faults, and trying to correct them. Nationalism is thinking that you are in fact better than the others, or that your country are always right against the rest of the world. Nationalism was the cancer of Europe for centuries. Yes. And that's why I said that, to me, one of the biggest revolutions, at least the one in my lifetime, was the birth of the European Union. Because it killed our ghosts of nationalism, at least at one time. They are They are about to be born again now because of the economic crisis. But still we have made a long way, and which is important to me now. Is, for example, I was walking in Prague yesterday with my wife, and we are able to see things as simple as to say, look how amazing are the cafes. Looking how they take care of our monuments. We don't do this in Portugal. We should do this in Portugal. But if instead you go to Portugal, you can see things that you say, I wish this
we really have better coffee than in Portugal.
Yeah, so coffee shops.
No, oh, coffee shops.
Coffee shops. No.
The best ones are in Amsterdam.
Maybe.
I know which shops we are talking about.
Yes.
Now, Egypt has fabulous coffees. Egypt has fabulous coffees because in Egypt you can smoke the long pipe, the chicha, the nargile, and that's fantastic. In my opinion, at least.
I agree.
Imagine us all together here with an nargile. You
Ils sont tous drogués. Ils sont tous drogués, les Égyptiens.
But the Egyptians, they're all on drugs. They're all stoned.
Which brings me to another topic, which is drugs and alcohol.
And sex. No?
And sex.
Okay.
You know, this is all connected. You know, a lot of people think that it's emotion, that there's sins of emotion. But in fact, I see more sins on the side of rationality. If you want to wage a war against a nation, you exactly have to be sober. You have to have a PR plan. You have to have a strategy. I mean, if Hitler would only drink more, it would have been a much more peaceful continent, I think.
Yeah, and Kim Il-jong too.
Or Kim Il-jong too. So maybe we should, you know, instead of sending him books, send him a shisha with
some bottles of wine
nice.
too.
Or some bottles of wine, yes. Get him addicted to the same things that we are addicted. No, but this is the role of culture. Let's also include coffee shops in culture, because we can. Yes, we can.
Yeah.
How much is culture, and we can close with this question, how much is culture a uniting force then, and how much is it exactly a dividing force? Because culture has been used many times as exactly the hatred, the dividing force of nations. Wagner, to give the most obvious example.
Moi, je pense que la culture ne nous divise pas.
I think that culture does not divide.
C'est une générosité.
Culture is about generosity.
C'est une transcendance.
It's about transcendence.
Voilà, la culture n'est pas faite pour diviser. Mais
culture has not been made to divide people, but to bring them closer together. Perhaps it's the mentality that divides us. Perhaps we don't have the same culture in the sense of mentality.
C'est une élévation d'esprit.
Perhaps it's about the elevation of the spirit.
On est reçu un peu partout, on est traduit un peu partout, on est reçu de la même façon.
Writers are perhaps received everywhere the same way, even if they're read by somebody who lives in a different culture. I think that the problem is that the cultures are, or people are, shutting themselves into themselves. It's this assurance that they don't need anyone else. When I was in the US, I told people, look, the world does not end at your borders. It begins there. But there's so many people who just don't have this intellectual curiosity about other cultures. I mean, I was lucky, I was fortunate because I was bilingual, I was born in a country that's just liberated itself. So I read writers from all over the world, and they have constructed me, they have shaped me. I am the face of all of them. But then perhaps I could write in a way that would be understood in Japan and elsewhere. Why? Because I had two cultures, the Western culture and the Arabic and Muslim and Berber culture. And all that helped me understand culture that is in service of humanity as a whole. We have to be willing to come to the other.
So it should be a uniting force. Can I linguistically deduce that it always isn't?
Oui, normalement, c'est sa vocation.
Well, but it's vocation, it's its goal.
Pour ceux qui sont attentifs, c'est toujours le cas. Moi, j'adore le cinéma américain.
I mean, I love American movies. I would forget about, I don't like, I may not like Bush and whatever, but I like their movies. I love Dostoevsky, I love Gorky, I love Gogol. Gogol is a god for me. And I think it allows me to see Russians in a different light. It is through culture that we get acquainted with the people that we don't know, that we're not familiar with. So perhaps culture is a panacea, really. It's the common ideal that we have.
Encore faut-il avoir
But we have to care about the others. I was translated in Israel, and I have to say that my editor was very happy. He went to see the intellectuals and the journalists and whatever. And many people told him he's Algerian, it's whatever, we don't care. And I think it is those barriers that make us fail to see the others. But once I was there, I still met a lot of people who liked my books even though they did not agree with my ideas. And I think that is the force of culture.
Congratulations, that's a wonderful ability to speak in such a language that truly everybody has a relation and you work as a bridge. We have 3 more minutes, so I give the word to, I start with you because you've said the least. So if you want to. Whenever, didn't we maybe also, isn't this a little bit exaggerated, this culture? I mean, the nations that always waged wars were more culturally advanced. I mean, of course, there is this example of barbarians being able to stand up against the Roman Empire 2,000 years ago. But in the most recent history, it is usually the more cultured, the more advanced nations that start thinking, fetishizing their own nation and thus starting the war. So is there also a little bit of a black sort of warning sign when it comes to culture, that it can also create adversity?
No, of course, culture may help in the long run to cultivate, shape the ideas, the feelings against the other, but this will not succeed unless we solve the main problems. The main problems, very simple. People need to eat and live normally in a very decent way. This is the problem. And when you approach this, you can change many things in the culture. Look about Hitler. People need some...
He has birthday tomorrow, by the way.
Yeah?
Yes, really.
Thank God he's not here to...
Yeah, to celebrate. To celebrate. But sorry, I jumped.
So he brought them in a short run, brought them jobs and food and the idea of a great Germany, and which means colonies abroad and more, and they saw the Ukrainian meat coming by trains from Ukraine, and so culture retreated. When afterwards they realized that it was an illusion, then culture started to work. Why should you mentioned Wagner, for instance, or I don't remember. Wagner. What is Wagner? Wagner is a composer. He was used in a certain situation, but he is still Wagner, and he may play another role. It depends on the general social situation.
Well, let me just go back to your precedent question to say that if culture unites people or not. I couldn't come up with a definition of culture. But what I know is that culture, being able to understand different cultures, it's what makes you a rich person.
Right.
When I been in Ibrahim's country in Egypt, I thought to myself, it's amazing, it's unbelievable that this has been made by human beings like me. 10,000 years ago or something like that. The idea of the art as something that was above man was there already. And this has been traveling with us through our story. And wherever you go, there is music, there is painting, there is architecture, there is literature, wherever in the world. This can only bring us closer and together. And this can be above any politics, because this is the difference between mankind and animals. And that's one thing that makes us special and different from animals.
That's a wonderful ending. I thank you for it. So dear readers, if I may so address you, I'm very happy that you could join your writers, your authors and people that try to explain something that's different and yet part of us. I thank you very much, and I especially thank you for coming to Prague, for being the way you are, and I wish you all the best in your future. Thank you very much. This works in every culture.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. It's been really wonderful. That's right. One as well. Děkuju moc krát. Děkuju.
Yes. Well, really fabulous. Thank you very much. So, not again.
This is my first one today.
It's not your last.
Thank you.
There's a short break. There's an intermission, 15 minutes, no more, really no more, because we're going to have Orhan Pamuk. He will read, he will speak a bit, and then we'll have the continuation of gala evening. We'll have reception, fabulous reception, food, wine, everything you can imagine. So come back in 15 minutes, okay? See you soon.
Yeah, I remember.
Okay, Monsieur.